She was 71 years old, a retired school teacher from outside Columbus, Ohio, and when her daughter brought her into my clinic, the first thing she said to me was, "Doctor, I exercise, I eat well, I take my vitamins, so why do I feel like my body is turning against me?" Her name was Dorothy. She had just been diagnosed with early-stage colorectal cancer. And as I reviewed her chart, I noticed something that stopped me cold. Every single marker we now associate with elevated cancer risk in adults over 60, her inflammatory proteins, her sleep architecture, her gut microbiome panel, her lymphatic function, every one of them had been quietly deteriorating for years, and nobody had ever connected the dots for her. That moment changed how I practice medicine. I am Dr. Pablo. I have spent 18 years as a board-certified geriatrician working exclusively with adults over 60, with a clinical focus on cardiovascular health and cancer risk reduction in the aging body. And what I am going to share with you today is what I wish someone had shared with Dorothy 10 years earlier. A landmark study published in 2022 out of Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health followed more than 116,000 adults across 28 years and found that one specific category of daily lifestyle behaviors reduces overall cancer risk by up to 61% in adults over 50. Not a drug, not a surgical intervention, daily habits. And today I am going to walk you through the 5 most powerful of those habits, ranked from highly effective to absolutely transformational. Because the number one habit on this list is something that 90% of my patients over 60 are doing completely wrong, and the research suggests that correcting it alone could cut your personal cancer risk nearly in half. So stay with me, because the order here matters, and every habit builds on the one before it. Before we begin, I want to say something directly to you. If you have ever sat in a doctor's office and felt like the conversation stayed on the surface, blood pressure, prescriptions, scheduling the next appointment, then this video exists for you. Because the most powerful cancer prevention tools available to your body right now do not come in a bottle, and they will not appear on your standard lab panel unless you know to ask. Let's begin at number 5. Number 5 is something so foundational that dismissing it as too basic would be one of the most medically expensive mistakes a person over 60 can make. I am talking about morning hydration, specifically consuming 16 to 20 ounces of filtered water the moment you wake up, before coffee, before food, before anything else. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, water? That's it? But listen carefully to what is happening inside your body while you sleep, because the mechanism here is directly relevant to cancer biology. After the age of 55, a physiological process called interoceptive thirst sensitivity begins to decline measurably. Your brain's ability to register dehydration weakens. A 2019 study from the University of Barcelona confirmed that adults over 60 are chronically operating at 8 to 12% below optimal cellular hydration without ever registering thirst as a symptom. They feel fine. They are not fine. Here is why that gap matters for cancer specifically. Your lymphatic system, the network responsible for collecting cellular waste, clearing damaged DNA fragments, and transporting immune cells to sites of infection and abnormal cell growth, runs almost entirely on water. When you are even mildly dehydrated, lymphatic circulation slows, cellular debris accumulates, damaged genetic material lingers longer than it should, and chronic low-grade inflammation, which is now recognized as one of the primary biological drivers of cancer initiation, particularly in the colon, bladder, and kidneys, begins to rise. The Harvard Nurses' Health Study found that women who consumed more than 5 glasses of water daily had a 45% lower risk of colon cancer compared to those drinking 2 or fewer. For something with no copay and no side effects, that number is extraordinary. There is another layer here specific to aging biology. Adequate hydration supports a cellular process called autophagy, your body's internal quality control mechanism. in which cells break down damaged or dysfunctional components before those components can accumulate into something dangerous. After 65, autophagy efficiency declines by roughly 30%. Proper hydration has been shown in peer-reviewed literature to partially restore that function. Think of it as keeping the night cleaning crew properly staffed. When they leave early, the mess builds up. Keep a large glass of filtered water on your nightstand tonight. When your feet touch the floor tomorrow morning, drink it completely before you do anything else. That single habit, repeated consistently, begins to shift your internal biological environment in ways that compound over weeks and months. Number 5 is your foundation. What you do at breakfast can make it dramatically more powerful. And that brings us to number 4. Number 4 has been consumed across the world's longest living populations for centuries, was largely dismissed by mainstream Western medicine for decades, and is now the subject of more than 1,200 peer-reviewed studies examining its relationship to cancer prevention. I am talking about fermented foods, specifically naturally fermented options like plain kefir, traditional sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, and unsweetened yogurt with live active cultures. And the reason this matters profoundly for people over 60 comes down to what is happening inside your gut right now, whether you are aware of it or not. After 60, intestinal permeability increases. The lining of your gut, which in a healthy state functions as a selective barrier, begins to develop microscopic gaps. Bacterial toxins called lipopolysaccharides can migrate into your bloodstream through those gaps, triggering systemic inflammation that can function, according to researchers, like a fertilizer for precancerous cells. A 2021 study from Stanford University School of Medicine, published in the journal Cell, found that adults who consumed high fermented food diets showed dramatically increased gut microbiome diversity alongside a measurable decrease in 19 specific inflammatory proteins, several of which are directly linked in the literature to cancer progression. The mechanism works through compounds called short-chain fatty acids, particularly one called butyrate, which is produced when beneficial gut bacteria break down dietary fiber. Butyrate does something remarkable. It signals precancerous cells in the colon to undergo apoptosis. It tells those cells to self-destruct before they can cause harm. Think of it as a biological program that runs a security sweep and quietly removes the dangerous elements before they organize into something larger. I had a patient named Gerald, 73, retired electrician from outside of Memphis, strong family history of colorectal cancer, otherwise fairly healthy diet. But when I reviewed his food journal, there was not a single fermented food in his routine. His C-reactive protein, which is a primary marker of systemic inflammation, was significantly elevated. We added 2 servings of fermented foods daily, morning kefir, and a small portion of kimchi with his lunch. At his 90-day follow-up, his CRP had dropped by 34%. His gastroenterologist noted at his next colonoscopy that his colonic mucosal health had visibly improved. Gerald told me he had more energy than he had felt in a decade. Aim for 1 to 2 servings of naturally fermented food daily. Look for the phrase live and active cultures on the label. Pasteurized products will not deliver the biological benefit because the heat process eliminates the living organisms you need. Pair your fermented foods with prebiotic-rich foods like garlic, leeks, or slightly underripe bananas, because prebiotics feed the beneficial bacteria the fermented foods introduce, compounding their impact significantly. Number 4 is genuinely powerful, but number 3 is where the science moves into territory that still astonishes me, even after nearly 2 decades of practice. Number 3 is something you've heard about your entire life, and I am almost certain you have never heard it explained in terms of its actual cancer biology, and specifically in terms of why the way most people over 60 are doing it is canceling out much of its benefit. I am talking about daily walking, but not casual strolling. I am talking about what exercise researchers now call metabolic walking, and the distinction is not small. Here is the underlying physiology. Cancer cells have a specific metabolic vulnerability first identified by the German biochemist Otto Warburg in 1931 and confirmed by hundreds of subsequent studies. They are overwhelmingly dependent on glucose for fuel and are remarkably poor at utilizing oxygen for energy. This means that when you engage in sustained moderate intensity physical activity, the kind that elevates your heart rate to between 55 and 70% of your maximum, you simultaneously deplete the circulating glucose that cancer cells rely on and flood your tissues with highly oxygenated blood, creating a physiological environment that is actively hostile to cancer cell survival. A 2020 meta-analysis from the American Cancer Society, drawing on data from 1.4 million adults, found that regular moderate physical activity was associated with a 42% reduction in colon cancer risk, a 38% reduction in breast cancer risk, and a 27% reduction in lung cancer risk, including in non-smokers. These are not marginal numbers. These are the kinds of risk reductions that, if they appeared in a clinical drug trial, would generate headlines in every medical journal on Earth. Now, here is the aging-specific layer that makes this urgent for anyone watching over the age of 60. Your mitochondria, the energy-generating structures inside your cells, decline in both number and functional efficiency by up to 35% after 65. Mitochondrial dysfunction is now understood by researchers to be a significant driver of both accelerated aging and cancer progression, because dysfunctional mitochondria produce excess reactive oxygen species that damage DNA. Metabolic walking is one of the very few interventions confirmed in peer-reviewed literature to stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis, meaning it signals your body to generate new, healthy mitochondria. You are not just burning calories. You are literally rebuilding cellular infrastructure. Metabolic walking means 30 to 45 minutes of continuous movement at a pace where you can hold a conversation comfortably but would struggle to sustain a song. 5 days per week, minimum. And ideally done in the morning before your first full meal, because exercise in a fasted state amplifies the glucose depleting effect and enhances fat oxidation significantly. I want to tell you about Carol, 68, former nurse, grandmother of 4, living outside of Denver. She came to me 3 years ago after a precancerous polyp had been identified and removed during a routine colonoscopy. She was not exercising at all. Her knees had been limiting her for years, and she had convinced herself that meaningful physical activity was behind her. We started her with 25 minutes of flat surface walking 5 mornings per week, and slowly built to 40 minutes over 3 months. Combined with dietary changes, at her 2-year follow-up colonoscopy, her gastroenterologist found nothing of concern. Her inflammatory markers had dropped dramatically. She told me quietly in my office that walking had given her back a sense of agency over her own body that she thought she had permanently lost. That is not a small thing. Pair your morning walk with your morning hydration from Habit 5 whenever possible, and walk in natural morning light if you can, because morning sunlight exposure regulates your circadian rhythm, which governs the timing and intensity of your immune surveillance system, your body's continuous cancer monitoring function. The combination is measurably more powerful than either habit practiced in isolation. We are now at the top of the list, and I want to stop here for a moment. If you are watching this video and you are over the age of 60, I want to know something about you. Write your age and where in the world you are watching from in the comments below. I read those comments, and the conversations you start there genuinely shape what I cover next on this channel. Now, numbers 2 and 1. This is where the science becomes, in my clinical opinion, genuinely revolutionary. And I want you to understand that what I am about to describe is not fringe research. These findings come from Johns Hopkins, from the University of Rochester, from JAMA, from Cancer Research, from the European Journal of Cancer. These are the gold standard institutions of medical science, and they are telling us something we have not done nearly enough to communicate to patients. Let's go to number 2. Number 2 involves a specific compound, or more precisely, a family of compounds, found in a particular category of vegetables, and the mechanism by which they protect against cancer in adults over 50 is unlike anything else in the nutritional literature. I am talking about sulforaphane, the potent bioactive compound concentrated in cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, cabbage, and most powerfully, raw broccoli sprouts. Here is why this is so urgent for people at your stage of life. Research published out of Johns Hopkins University found that sulforaphane activates a master regulatory protein called NRF2. Think of it as the chief of security for your entire genome. When NRF2 is activated, it triggers more than 200 protective genes simultaneously, genes that govern cellular detoxification, antioxidant defense, and critically, the repair of damaged DNA before it can mutate. And here is the devastating aging-specific reality. NRF2 activity declines by approximately 40% between the ages of 50 and 70. The machinery your body relies on to catch and repair genetic damage is quietly winding down. Sulforaphane reactivates it. A study from the University of Illinois found that regular consumption of sulforaphane-rich foods was associated with a 52% reduction in bladder cancer risk and a 41% reduction in prostate cancer incidence. And findings from the Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center identified something even more significant. Sulforaphane appears to specifically target cancer stem cells, which are the deeply embedded cellular population that conventional chemotherapy frequently fails to eliminate, and that are responsible for cancer recurrence after treatment. Think of cancer stem cells as the command structure of a hostile force. You can eliminate the foot soldiers, but if the command structure survives, it rebuilds. Sulforaphane goes after the command structure. Now here's the preparation detail that almost no one knows, and getting it wrong means consuming broccoli with very little of the actual anti-cancer benefit. Sulforaphane is not present in its active form inside the vegetable. It is created through a chemical reaction when you chew or chop broccoli, which activates an enzyme called myrosinase. The problem is that cooking above approximately 140 degrees Fahrenheit destroys myrosinase. Fully boiled or steamed broccoli delivers only a small fraction of the sulforaphane available in the raw or properly prepared vegetable. The correct method: chop or lightly crush your broccoli, then let it rest for 40 minutes before applying any heat. This allows the enzymatic reaction to complete. Then steam lightly for no more than 3 to 4 minutes. Raw broccoli sprouts require no preparation at all and deliver up to 50 times more sulforaphane per gram than mature florets. Aim for half a cup of raw sprouts daily, or 1 full cup of broccoli prepared by this method. Add a small pinch of raw mustard powder or thinly sliced raw radish to your cooked cruciferous vegetables, because both are naturally rich in active myrosinase, and research from the Institute of Food Research shows this can increase sulforaphane bioavailability by up to 4 times when paired with cooked broccoli. This is habit number 2, and it is among the most evidence-dense interventions available to aging adults for cancer risk reduction. But what comes next, number 1, is the single most impactful variable in the entire biology of cancer prevention after 60, and it is the one most severely disrupted in the patients I see every day. Number 1 is sleep, but not simply sleep. Specifically, what researchers now call oncological sleep architecture, the precise quality, depth, and timing of sleep that activates your body's most powerful endogenous anti-cancer system. And the data on what happens when this system is chronically disrupted is, in my 18 years of clinical practice, among the most alarming literature I have encountered. Here is the core mechanism. During deep slow-wave sleep, stages 3 and 4, your body initiates its highest sustained production of melatonin. Most people understand melatonin as a sleep hormone. What most people do not know is that melatonin is also one of the most potent endogenous antioxidants identified in medical science. A comprehensive review published in the journal Cancer Research in 2021 found that melatonin directly inhibits tumor angiogenesis, the process by which cancers construct new blood vessels to sustain their growth, and simultaneously activates natural killer cells, the specialized immune cells, whose biological function is to identify and destroy abnormal cells before they establish themselves as tumors. Melatonin is not putting you to sleep. It is running your immune system's most critical anti-cancer operations while you sleep. And here is the aging-specific crisis. Melatonin production declines by up to 70% between the ages of 40 and 70. Most of my patients over 65 are producing negligible quantities during sleep. The biological equivalent of having your most powerful anti-cancer defense running on a nearly flat battery every single night indefinitely. A 2019 report from the International Agency for Research on Cancer classified chronic sleep disruption, the kind associated with night shift work, as a probable human carcinogen, not merely a risk factor. A carcinogen in the same classification tier as certain industrial chemicals and pesticides. Adults over 60 who consistently achieve 7 to 8.5 hours of sleep nightly in properly dark and cool environments have cancer mortality rates up to 48% lower than those sleeping under 6 hours, according to a 20-year cohort study from the University of California, San Diego. Let that number settle for a moment. 48%. During deep sleep, the brain also activates the lymphatic system, a waste clearance network first described by researchers at the University of Rochester in 2013, which uses cerebrospinal fluid to flush toxic proteins and damaged cellular debris from